Good take or deep reach.
Dan Riccio and Randip Janda back with another edition of Good Take or Deep Reach. And yes, the Canucks' recent run of results has kept the door open for even just the slightest chance at the playoffs. Elliot Friedman mentioned it on Saturday in headlines that maybe Jim Benning is holding off on taking too many phone calls, but injuries have now plagued them. Brandon Sutter did not play in their last matchup against the Winnipeg Jets. Bo Horvat left that game with an injury. Elias Pettersson is still out at least until they return from their bye week at the end of March. Jay Beagle hasn't been playing. They are without their top four centermen that they had on opening night. Randip, does the recent run of injuries make it that the Vancouver Canucks should be selling?
It absolutely does. Listen, the Canucks, good for them that they've picked up points. They've picked up 15 out of the possible last 20, which is great. The problem is when you're looking at the standings, they really haven't made much ground on those teams above them, and that's a problem. And now you add these injuries. Remember, we're not talking about a couple of important pieces. We're talking about all of their starting centers from day one, opening night this season, are out right now. Elias Pettersson and Bo Horvat, we'll see what happens with that injury, but this isn't a situation where you have to really ask yourself, who are we? And to me, you have to start selling off these pieces at the deadline. The Canucks are not a playoff contender based on the results, and the injuries don't make it any better. This is a team that's going to have a really tough stretch to end off the year, so you better start selling.
Yeah, we agree on this one. It's kind of hard to deny where the Canucks are at right now. And I mean, when the owner starts tweeting about injuries, you know things are getting bad. Yesterday, on Monday, when the Canucks picked up Travis Boyd from the Maple Leafs, shortly after they picked up Jimmy Vesey to help out their injury situation, the owner, Francesco Aquilini, tweeted, "Happy that Travis Boyd became available to bolster our group. Injuries."
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was a go injuries or if it was just injuries. It's still confusing. I'd like an explainer on that tweet.
It was kind of strange. And then, of course, the game happens and Brandon Sutter's not out there for warm-up and Bo Horvat goes down with an injury. So Canucks Twitter, of course, memeing the owner like crazy. And really, this was a team that even before all of the injuries had to be realistic about their situation, Randy. Even with the recent run of results where they've been one of the best teams in really the NHL in all of March, it's been on the back of Thatcher Demko, and they've kind of been getting by about as well as Spicoli gets by in fast times at Ridgemont High. Just not that great. You're kind of just getting by with a little over 50%. You just can't live like that and expect to make up the ground that they dug themselves in. So absolutely, they need to be realistic about this, and they need to think about which players are long-term solutions and which players can be, used in a way to aid the future and help them put pieces around Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and the rest of the young core that Jim Benning has built.
Well, last month, Jim Benning himself, when he was asked at a press conference about how long until this team is a Stanley Cup contender, what did he say? He said 2 years. So if that is your window, hanging on to assets and hanging on to UFAs this year does not make any sense whatsoever. So I'm looking at the Brandon Sutters. I'm looking at Tanner Pearson. I'm looking at Alex Edler. I know he's been around Vancouver forever, but that doesn't mean anything this year, especially if your intention is to be a contender in a couple of years. Listen, the Canucks would have to win 15 of 20 games to just have a chance at the playoffs. And if that were to happen somehow, are they a contender to win a playoff series? No, they'd be the underdog going into every single series that they play in if they were to make it. So you have to really look in the mirror here and say, all right, what is my team and what can we realistically do this year? And to me, it doesn't seem like they can do much, and that's why you have to look at trading those guys I mentioned. But Travis Hamonic, Jordy Ben, these are depth pieces that you are able to get something for. It's not going to be a king's ransom because they aren't those players, but everything matters, whether they're mid-round draft picks, whether they're potential prospects. The Canucks are 2 years away, and you have to be able to leverage those assets and get something in return.
Well, that's kind of the issue here is, what is Brandon Sutter really going to fetch you in trade? You'd rather get something than nothing, but it's a player that isn't going to fetch a big-time draft choice. Jordy Ben will be a depth piece and a nice one. We were hearing that he's already taking phone calls or has been having interest from around the league. Travis Hamonic has a no-move clause. He wants to stay in Western Canada. Maybe he's an option for the Winnipeg Jets, who could use the help on the back end. But there's limited opportunity there to make a trade. And the whole Tanner Pearson thing and sending out this smoke screen that they want to keep him around and they'd love to sign him to an extension. Who are we kidding here, Randip? You know, they've got to sign Elias Pettersson. They've got to sign Quinn Hughes. They've got to sign Thatcher Demko. His number goes up with every start that he makes. There's just not enough cap room that doesn't fit in their cap structure to keep Tanner Pearson around. So the way I look at it is maybe you have to get creative with some of these sales here at the deadline. Tyler Motte is a name that's been brought up a lot. What do you think it would take to pry Tyler Motte away from the Vancouver Canucks?
Tyler Motte is a damn good player in their bottom six. He's been on certain nights really the only guy that you can expect a level of compete, a level of effort, and a level of speed in a pretty slow bottom six. But he is a bottom six player. He's not a guy that can play in your top six. So there are thoughts that maybe, just maybe, he can get you a price similar to what Barclay Goodrow got the San Jose Sharks, right? They essentially exchanged a third-round pick for a first-round pick in a deal for Barclay Goodrow. And if that's the price, you have to listen. Tyler Motte's a good player, but one thing you have to remember, in 2022, he's a UFA. So he may not be an impending free agent this year, but the year after, he may walk for free if you can't sign him. So you have to start listening. And if there's a contender out there that says, our bottom six is not as good as we want it to be and we're willing to pay for it, you got to listen to those offers and potentially take that offer if it's a late first round pick or an early second round.
You know, the one real problem I have with that is, you know, Tyler Motte, with the Canucks and the way that they are structured right now, they don't have a lot of players that are solid in their bottom six that they can rely on and are very efficient. They are signed through next year, and Tyler Motte is one of them. He's been so good since they acquired him in another deadline move a few years ago for Thomas Vanek that it's going to take a lot. And I don't think you can get him out of Vancouver without a pretty significant deal. And I think the Canucks are right on holding off on trading Tyler Motte unless they get a really nice offer, because they do want to be better next year. And Tyler Motte does make this team better when he's in the lineup. Another couple of names. Jake Virtanen keeps popping up in trade rumors. He's on the block. He's off the block. He's getting traded for Danton Heinen in Anaheim. I don't know. It's always a new story with Jake Virtanen. We've been going through this for the last 5 years with the Vancouver Canucks and Jake Virtanen. Adam Gaudette's name has popped up. Is there any other name, Randy, that you would single out as a potential deadline sale for the Canucks?
The name that really intrigues me, you actually said it there, is Adam Gaudette, because this is a guy that's a bit of in between situations with the Canucks. He's not necessarily a defensive stalwart. He can't play in the bottom six. And the Canucks already have Elias Pettersson and Bo Horvat in as their top two centers. So you're not in a situation where you can elevate Adam Gaudette. So what is he for the Vancouver Canucks? I don't think the team has ever figured that out. So to me, it's a situation of you have to see if you can get something for this player. And remember, his contract, relatively cheap. There's been interest going back a couple of years, apparently from Nashville. David Poyle, fellow Northeastern alumni, is a big fan of Adam Gaudette from what, you know, has been mentioned in the past. So that's a guy that I look at and say, can you leverage, if he doesn't fit on your roster, can you leverage a prospect or potentially pick maybe a combination of both from a Nashville where they see a young center who is something that they probably need because they've got an older group now in their late 20s. Does he provide you something in that mid spot where you get a little bit younger, you get some flexibility away from the Ryan Johanssons and the Matt Duchenes of the world? And that's a player that I think, not only in Nashville, but in other markets, would be interesting because maybe on those teams' reach, he would be able to play up the lineup. In Vancouver, that simply isn't the case because he's got Horvat and he's got Pettersson in front of him.
Yeah, I don't think you can count on him as a top six forward. He maybe has that offense in him. We've seen since he moved to the wing, he can really generate a lot of individual scoring chances. But what does that mean for your lineup? Can you get more out of him than the Canucks have so far? I think Adam Gaudette is maybe a play for teams that aren't necessarily contenders. If he's available, that's a player that maybe somebody wants to take a chance on. It's a good take by you, Randy, at least for once. It is Good Take or Deep Reach. What do you think the Canucks should be doing at the deadline? Let us know in the comments. Always like and subscribe as well. We'll be back with another edition of Good Take or Deep Reach.